So of course I got interested, in the molecular hydrogen applications, especially because again, it has, as we know now, it has so many benefits, right? We have approximately 1,100 white paper studies out there, including 200 human ones, which is impressive. And it shows that it has a positive effect on over 170 common diseases. And when you say that to the average doctor, they say, oh, that's impossible, right? But in order to understand why it has a vast positive impact on all those diseases, is if you understand its effect on your impact on physiology and biology on a cellular and even a mitochondrial level. And if you understand what its actions are, then obviously it becomes easy to understand why it has such a positive impact on cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, gut problems, and even, again, helping us with living longer, longevity, or athletic performance. And in all those areas, it will have that positive effect just because of its simple physiological, biological effects.
Yeah, it's kind of working at a level that becomes a root cause, a root element process to the vitality of almost every cell, and therefore, it expresses itself through a myriad of different ways, right? So, talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us a little bit about how hydrogen works.
So the main functions or the main physiological effects is, number one, it's known as a selective antioxidant. We all know antioxidants to neutralize free radicals, because excess free radicals cause that oxidative stress, which is not good for aging or for disease, right? But the key here is to understand that hydrogen, the first element on the periodic table, is the lightest element in the universe. It's the smallest molecule, and it is not charged. There's no positive or negative. Right. So, because it's so small and not charged, it can easily cross the cell membrane and enter the cell, protecting the RNA, the DNA, the proteins, etc. So, an extreme example, here's cancer, right? What is cancer? It's a mutation of our DNA. What's causing that mutation? Well, it's free radicals inside the cell, mostly hydroxyl free radicals that causing that mutation, right? And here we are, tumor cancer. Now, what if we have something like molecular hydrogen that simply waltzes through the cell membrane, enters the cell, and neutralizes those hydroxyl free radicals? So we can see how we can manage oxidative stress and even cancer growth inside the cell. The reason why they say selective, because it does not harm the antioxidants or the ROS, the reactive oxygen species, that are important for us, because free radicals are important in our immune system, fighting pathogens, viruses, cell signaling, etc. So it leaves the good ones alone and only neutralizes the harmful ones. So that's the number one thing. Number two, anti-inflammation. It's a strong anti-inflammatory, going through the NRF2 pathway, reducing cytokine activity, and all the interleukins, etc. So there's plenty of research, again, that shows all the different ways it reduces systemic inflammation. And we now know, and even conventional medicine agrees, that over 90% of all diseases is directly correlated to the systemic inflammation. So it keeps that at bay, which is very important.
And those two are actually linked.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
What's the problem with inflammation? Why is inflammation a problem? Well, the inflammation is a problem because it increases oxidative stress. Mm-hmm. That's the real reason, right? So this is why when you're both having an impact on the inflammation itself, but also the underlying problem that it causes, which is excess oxidative stress. Now you're kind of getting really a central process to both health, longevity, disease formation, disease resolution, etc. So one of the ways I like to think about hydrogen is that it's an adaptogen. So in the sense of certain molecules, like say ashwagandha, if your cortisol levels and your adrenal glands are depleted and your cortisol is too low, well, it will raise your cortisol back to a normal cortisol curve for the day.
Always seeks balance. Yeah.
It always seeks balance. If it's too high, the ashwagandha will lower it back into, right? So an adaptogen is something that brings something back into balance. And that's actually what hydrogen does. It functions as an adaptogen. So if you don't have enough superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, catalase, the enzymes that we have to actually, they're like the catalytic converter in our mitochondria to convert those free radicals, it will upregulate the expression of those genetically. And genetically, we're built differently. Some of us are built to actually express those very efficiently, and some of us are not built to express them very efficiently. And if you don't know your genetics, you should. But regardless, if you take the hydrogen, you can actually bring those up, right, and balance that. And then the interesting thing about leaving the good molecules alone, it has to do with the rate of reaction that hydrogen has with them. So it's interesting that the chemistry works out to where it's actually doing what it needs to do without doing what it shouldn't be doing. And it has the adaptogenic function of raising your own body's capacity to deal with oxidative stress while it's lowering inflammation. It's almost like the perfect tool.
It is. It's kind of almost hard to believe because you're just talking about adaptogenic. So if you look at some of its other functions, it's illustrated very clearly. For example, it promotes autophagy, right? So it's the recycling of used proteins in our cell, etc. So it promotes that because that way you recycle, or it regulates apoptosis. It regulates. The key is regulate, right? It just makes sure, because apoptosis, obviously, for the listeners, we are constantly forming new cells. So at the same time, other cells need to die off to keep that balance. And many times that process is sluggish, and then we end up with what's called zombie cells or senescent cells. And those are cells that are still taking resources but not contributing to any function in our body. So we need to kind of get rid of those zombie cells. And again, molecular hydrogen shows that it both has a positive impact and regulates apoptosis and autophagy, which again illustrates that adaptogenic property of molecular hydrogen.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's impressive stuff.
We have got selective antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, apoptosis, autophagy. Obviously, it's cytoprotective. So once it gets inside the cell, it does protect the mitochondria, the proteins, the RNA, the DNA. Very important when we talk about degenerative diseases like neurodegenerative diseases. So when we talk about dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, traumatic brain injury, stroke, you name it, we get very positive effects there also. So also cytoprotective.